And I want to open this episode with a bit of an all call. If you are a coach in the health and wellness space, a personal trainer, a dietitian, a nutritionist, if you are someone, a service provider who is working with clients and is working in the endurance sports space, again, health and wellness, personal training, if that is you and you want to grow and scale your business, if you are not making the money that you want to make, if you feel like you don't have the support that you would like to have, the community that you wish you had, if you don't have people in your community that you can share ideas with, that you can grow with, that you can share your ideas, get feedback. If you feel like you're lacking that community, if any of this sounds like you, I want to invite you to reach out. TEC is working to help coaches put an end to the narrative that you can't make a living being a coach. You can't make a living investing in the lives of athletes, of people that are looking to better themselves, that want to live a healthier lifestyle. We are here to change that narrative, and we want to help anyone in that space who feels like they need, again, support, community, resources, business development skills, marketing, sales. If there's any gap in what you have available to you and what's keeping you from the success that you want, the business that you want, the life that you want to lead, we want to help. Our goal is to bring on and work with 100 coaches in 2024 to help them grow and scale their businesses. We have everything from software to business development to entrepreneurship, training to sales, marketing, as well as an amazingly supportive and dynamic group of coaches and service providers that are here and committed to solving this very real pain point for people in these industries, and really looking to change the narrative around what it looks and feels like to be someone who is committed to changing the lives of others, and wants to build a scalable and revenue producing business around that. So if that is you, if you were listening to this podcast and you've had any of these pain points and you'd like to learn more, please reach out. You can do that at enduranceminded.com. You can find TEC at Thomas Endurance Coaching on all social media platforms. You can find us at thomasendurancecoaching.com. Reach out to us, and we would love to connect with you to help you understand how we can help you change this narrative and how we are uniquely positioned as a company to help people like yourself finally put an end to this pervasive narrative in our industry. We are committed. I am committed to changing that for coaches, for service providers in the health and wellness space. And it is something that couldn't be more excited about. I couldn't be more passionate about it. And we have what we need to help coaches do exactly that, which is build a business that they're excited about, to make money off of something that they are passionate about. And I believe that that's something that everyone should have the opportunity and access to. So again, if that sounds like you, if you want to change that narrative for yourself, if you want to build a business you're excited about, if you want to make the money that you want, if you want to live a life that excites you, doing something that you love and you're passionate about, and you need support, resources, tools, community, please reach out. Again, you can do that at enduranceminded.com. You can also reach us at thomasendurancecoaching.com. And we would love to connect with you and help you change that and help you build something that you're excited about with people that you're excited about working with. So that is my all call. It is something, again, that I'm passionate about, and I couldn't help but put it out here in the hopes that anyone that's listening feels these very real challenges and pain points, and I want to be part of helping people solve that in the coaching space. Hello and welcome to Endurance Minded. It's the podcast that aims to redefine what it means to reach our full potential by exploring how movement and mindset impacts our lives and how we can all work to show up as the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Taylor Thomas, founder at TEC, and on this episode I welcome Jacob Oak. Jacob is the founder and owner of Oak Endurance out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. He is also a coach on the TEC coaching team and an all-around amazing person. This conversation was one that I've been looking forward to for a while. We welcomed Jacob to the TEC coaching team later last year, and I was eager to have him on the show because he brings so much of a unique outlook, so much expertise, so much wisdom, to the work that he does with his clients, to how he thinks about his own athletic identity and his athletic endeavors. And I have a ton of respect for him and how he shows up in this space at large. And I think ultimately the impact that he is having and will continue to have on the coaching space. And so we dive into a variety of topics, one of which has to do with body image. We get both of us have a vulnerable conversation around the ideal and the idea that we often hold around what it's supposed to look like to quote unquote look like an athlete, and how people, specifically people that are looking at coaches, people in the health and wellness space, have preconceptions around what people in this space should look like, and how Jacob and I don't necessarily fit those preconceptions, and how we've had to grapple with that. And as we've changed, both himself and me, as we've changed disciplines and continued to adapt and adjust and play around and experiment with how we engage in our own personal athletic identities and our own athletic endeavors, how we've had to just reconcile that body image component. We work to redefine potentially who an athlete is. We talk about what are the requirements there, who's included in that often seemingly exclusive club, and we advocate that it's not as exclusive as folks often make it out to be, and that it is an identity that is open really to everyone who wants to identify with it and who wants to engage in that space. And it's something that I believe very strongly in, and was really, really grateful to have the opportunity to have an honest conversation with someone who challenged me and also, I think helped us arrive at a place that was really valuable, and helped actually for me to gain some clarity around how I've defined who an athlete is. And I think ultimately it pushed me to open up that definition even more, which I was very happy to do. And then lastly, one of Jacob's mottos for Oak Endurance is that we get to do this. And we talk about that. What does it mean to have the opportunity to do the things that we do as athletes, to do the things that we do as coaches? And at the end of the day, it is a choice, and it's something that we get to do. And it's a privilege and an honor to be able to show up day after day and engage and push ourselves, and to think dynamically about how we show up for ourselves and how we show up in the world. And just that motto or mantra really captures a lot. And we elaborate on that, and Jacob explains, what that means for him, and I think that just captures such an amazing sentiment that's really needed in the coaching space. To get away from the grind and the hustle and the do whatever it takes at all cost. I think there's such an opportunity to expand that narrative and to provide more nuance, and Jacob does a really good job of that. So this episode is one, again, that I'm excited to release. It's a conversation I was excited to have. I know that anyone listening will get a ton of value. Jacob's an entrepreneur. He's a coach. He's an athlete. He is doing a ton with his time and his energy, and he is someone who's massively supportive of our mission and vision at TEC and what it means to be a coach and provide value and connection and a relationship to the athletes that we work with. So tons of value packed into this episode, and I know that everyone listening will get a ton out of it. So please enjoy my conversation with Jacob Oak. Jacob, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing good, Taylor. I'm excited to be here. Nervous, as we were just talking about, but excited to be on the podcast.
Yeah, no, we're gonna have fun.
Yeah.
So I want to start one of the things. I I love your slogan for your coaching company, Oak Endurance. Your tagline or slogan is "Start with your roots," and you have some great branding around that. Your last name's Oak, super cool. I dig it. But what's that? I'm curious. Like, what's that mean to you? Start with your roots. Why that slogan? What's the meaning behind that? What's the What's the kind of core of that for you?
Yeah, let's dive right into the hot questions. Things that make me really uncomfortable. I love it.
We're starting
Start with
strong.
yeah. Start with your roots. What does that mean to me? I'm kind of excited as I embark on this year and learning how to answer that question because I kind of just built it for 2 years and that mission and vision that I'm on. And now I'm starting to get asked more of like, what does that mean to you? And it changes, kind of honestly on a daily standpoint. But when I think about the endurance world, um, I kind of think of it almost like a drug sometimes. And I think a lot of times coaches, especially, we were once athletes and we become coaches because we love it so much. But everyone involved in this world, we use this sport, whether it's rowing, skiing, biking, whatever it is. We a lot of times we use whatever sport we're doing to kind of run from something. I think running's a good way to think about that. Like, what are you running from? I've been asked that before, but you can say, what are you biking from, rowing, skiing from, whatever it is, right? What are you kind of running away from, right? And from my own personal experiences and also now coaching a lot of different athletes, I've just found that so much time so much of the time in this world, when we start with a new athlete, new client, ourselves, when we embark on whatever goal we're kind of chasing, we always think about the what and like the how at the end of the tunnel. Like, what are we trying to do, right? Whether it's running a specific time, whether it's maybe losing weight, even whether it's trying to get more sleep for your training. Like, it can really be anything. We focus on the what and the how, and how we're gonna do whatever it is we're trying to do, right? We never really focus on why we're doing it in the first place. And like I said, we might not always have that answer, right? We might be using this sport as more of like a drug, and that's okay. And so kind of what I have found through my own personal kind of journey with this sport is that as I have started to dive more into why I'm doing what I'm doing as a coach, why I am helping my athletes do what they're doing, I found that creates so much more power, not only for you to hit your goals, but also more importantly, you're avoiding burnout, like having a good understanding of why you're doing it in the first place, right? Simon Sinek, I believe is his name. He kind of coined the whole start with why. That was a big book of his, right? And that's one of the first books I read on that topic in the first place, and kind of opened my mind to why, that question, why are we doing it? And it goes so much further outside of the endurance world, right? It's not just endurance sports, right? And the roots thing kind of just leads back to my name, and I was kind of thinking of how can I make these two things kind of play together, right? Because I'm asking clients, I'm asking friends, I'm always asking why. Why do you want to do that? Whether it's run a certain time, bike a certain time, whether it's maybe get a new job, right? I'm always asking them why. And I thought, how can I make this more like related to Oak, to be honest? And I came up with start with your roots, and start with the kind of like deep seated things going on inside of you of why is it that you're trying to do what you're doing in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that once you do that, things get powerful, quite frankly.
Right. Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's something I believe really strongly in, and spend a lot of time, honestly, on this platform, working to kind of understand why it's important in the first place to have a why. That's not language like you said. We focus on the what and the how, and it's not specifically through the lens of athleticism, but even in other areas of our life, right? It's project based, right? Get this done, check this off, do this thing. And it's the same thing with uh, with things in the athletic realm. It's like, okay, do this training, run this race, 12 weeks, right? We're all just kind of like it's very singular focused, and it's all these things kind of we want them to happen in a vacuum, and there's just so much more undercurrent there, right? And like you said, it keeps from burnout. I mean, that's really what I've always landed on, and I've given this a tremendous amount of thought. Is like it's the thing that keeps you going when everything else lets you down, right? When the day doesn't go as planned, when your workouts don't go, when you get injured, when you don't get the job promotion, when the business that you wanted to launch doesn't quite shake out the way you thought it was, or takes longer than you thought it did. Like your why is the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, right? It's the thing that helps you give a shit when everything else feels like it's kind of not working out for you. Yeah, what's been that journey for you to kind of what role has the why played in your life, and have you seen that play out for clients you work with as well?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it changes, right? I got into this sport. I think that we glorify the why like we are right now, right? For good reason. And I think that a lot of times we focus on this whole why thing being like some life altering, positive, influential thing, this journey we're on, right? And I think that it can be, but I think at first, for most people, whatever your why is, whatever your true why is, it's probably not going to be what it is like a year from now. And a lot of times it's probably not positive, right? So when I kind of think back to my journey and what I've been on, dude, for the past like 8 years, truly, everything I've been kind of doing, I feel like my why has been fairly negative towards my life. I think back to like, why did I even get into endurance sports and fitness in the first place, right? I've talked about body dysmorphia a few times with you and on podcasts and different things I've been a part of. And, it goes back to why was fitness important in the beginning to Jacob? Like why just fitness as a whole, right? I remember the first time I did my first diet, right? The things that were ingrained in my head of like, I needed to look a certain way. I needed to, have six pack ab, whatever it was, right? From like the time I was like 10, I was thinking about that type of stuff. And that, like it's still a part of me for sure. But like from a young age, that was like the why that fueled me. And that's not a very, that's not a very positive why. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a why, right? It was like that's read into that. Why do you feel the need to do that? Let's not ignore that. But I ignored it for like 6-8 years, probably my whole teenage mid college years, if not longer. I'm still playing with that idea a lot to this day. It's just it's evolved, right? But for those first like 10 to 20, that range, I just ran and I exercised a lot, and I gotten some pretty bad like disordered eating patterns and things like that because I had that why, and I was focused on it. And from the outside, like that it can look good sometimes, right? And it's not necessarily a good thing. Like I started performing in the fitness realm even with unhealthy habits fueled by a bad why, right? And I could have
Mm-hmm.
spent my whole life doing that, until
Mm-hmm.
something drastic maybe happened, right? Had I not, kind of dug into that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think like really college was when I started, kind of digging into like, okay, maybe there is like this unhealthy relationship I have with my body and eating specifically that like I'm not, I didn't know what to make of it, right? I was in college, I felt very lonely. Like I felt like the only like endurance athlete kind of in this like bubble that I was in, right? And it's just kind of like you start getting in your head and playing around with it. And that's when I think I first kind of started digging into my roots, right? Of figuring out like, okay, what is my relationship with my body and food, right? Um, and then, other things might come up, death in the family, bad breakups, as we get older, relationship dispatches with friends, or family member, whatever it is, right? You start running from a multitude of different things, potentially, right? And again,
Mm-hmm.
those are all, they're not they're not positive whys, but they're whys. Like I was using them. I go out. I remember my first marathon. There was someone that told me I was not going to finish. Like point blank, she said, "You'll for sure try. You will not finish this race." And I remember thinking, like, wow, okay, like that hurt. I still think about that clearly to this day. Of what I'm
Mm.
doing now, right? But that was fuel for that first marathon. And again, it's not a positive why, right? But it's there and we're using it. And then further kind of digging into that, now kind of fast forwarding through all of those different little one-off things and negative potential whys, I started, kind of building this different relationship with myself and why I'm doing what I'm doing in the first place. And I think back to, I mean, really, dude, it's like the middle school version of me. Like, where was Jacob or someone like him that could have showed that middle school version, like, no, you can get fit, you can do all of this stuff that you want to do, and you don't need to change your body, you don't need to eat a different way, right? You can, I didn't have that. It wasn't there yet. And not only that, I'm realizing in this field, or I've realized in this field, your age when you're 10 versus when you're 40, there's people 56 that are dealing with that. It's not anything that, a teenager, specific, right? And there's just not enough, it's growing now, which I love to see, but there's just not enough people that are out there saying, hey, I'm a strong guy, I'm a bigger guy, and that's okay. And I'm going to go, kick ass in whatever feat I want to do. Right. And
Mm.
or I'm working towards a healthy relationship with food and my body and whatnot. And I want to show people that. I want to be that light. I want clients, whomever that are, that I have the kind of privilege of having pay attention to me. Like I want to show people that I want to be what I didn't have. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's kind of a long answer.
totally. No, I love that. I mean, it should be a long answer. I mean, it's a really nuanced and complex thing. It's the thing that keeps us in the game, right? It's in the game. It keeps us engaged. It keeps us. I think it's the longevity of or what creates the lifelong athlete versus the 16 weeks to a marathon athlete, right? I'm not good on anybody who gets out the door, but if the goal is that we want to build ourselves and we want this part of our identity to support who we are as an individual and how we show up in the world, and an athlete, and how we identify in that space is something that stays with us, then yeah, like that why changing and evolving, I think is great. I'd actually never really thought about that. I think that's just such an awesome observation and very real thing. Is like it probably doesn't start, we it probably doesn't start super positive, right? We've talked about why, and we want it to be this real sexy, great, like undercurrent, strong, beautiful sentiment that gets us out of the bed in the morning. And I mean, I think there's some value, getting to a place where it is positive, but um, it might not start that way. And like thinking about my own experience, like no, I just I did it because I was super competitive and like wanted to be fast and like kind of had it out for everybody and like had a chip on my shoulder and like I just wanted to prove that I was better than people, in my mind. But I want to go back. It's really interesting, like the body part of things, and this idea of like what we think an athlete, I'm using quotes, is supposed to look like, and that's a really pervasive mindset, right? I know you've dealt with that both with clients and yourself, and I I actually had kind of, I think because I was like I am so immersed in this space that I kind of forgot that that was a thing. And then I had that happen to me personally, where I went from being a 130-pound ultra distance cyclist and runner to a 200-pound kind of do whatever I want athlete. And I still run and ride bikes, but I also lift weights and do other things. And I like never really thought about that. I was like, is what I wanted to do. I was like, this feels fulfilling. Like I'm gonna just roll with it. This is fun. I like engaging. And then like people like were pretty frequently when I started to look different, we're like, well, you don't look like a endurance athlete. And they're like, oh, you own a coaching company? Like you coach at like you don't look like an endurance athlete. You don't like pretty a lot. It still happens. And I was like, oh shit, like this is a thing. Like people are pretty dead set on what they think this person in their mind is supposed to look like and who that person should or shouldn't like have access to, right? Like with from the coaching perspective, to the extent of like, well, you don't look like that, so why are you working with those people? And I was like, oh man, that's crazy. Like I had just admittedly kind of like removed myself from that or whatever the reason was, but um yeah, like what's been your, I mean, you touched on it, but I'm curious like what your experience has been like with your coach hat on as well as just like on the athlete side, um,
Yeah.
with just that expectation of how people imagine people are supposed to look who engage in certain activities.
Yeah. Dude, it's so mind-boggling to me how Patrick Mahomes actually right now. This is a perfect example. There's a video of him. This dude's the best quarterback in the league, right? There's a video of him circling around the internet right now after they won the championship game on Sunday. He's got his shirt off, and people are making comments after comments on his body, on the internet, which that's the internet. But it is so mind-boggling to me how like as a society, we feel like we can do that. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think back to like, dude, like 8, 7, 6, like when they first kind of started happening for me. And I wasn't even a runner then, I was just a like overweight 8-year-old. And the comments started happening when, like you go swimming, you take your shirt off and some classmate says to put it away, like shit like that. Like it's
Mm.
honestly quite remarkable to me, and I don't say this to toot my own horn. I say it more so to bring like recognition to the amount of people that are like me growing up that did not get like through that enough to keep doing their sport or whatever it is they're trying to do, and instead accepted that was the way that they were, because I mean, like through middle school, high school, college, last week, like constantly, dude, people comment on my body all the time, all the time.
Uh,
And part of it's just like reps and experience of like understanding and kind of having that emotional like I guess maturity, intelligence, or whatever, to kind of know that like most people commenting, whether it's good or not, on myself or anyone else, they're really likely it's probably an insecurity that they have, and it's kind of this mindset shift you have to have of like they probably don't mean it against you, even though it feels like bricks right now on you, like it hurts, right? They probably mean it more against themselves, and deep down, they probably need help. Like it's like at the core of it, right? Um, and so from like that athlete standpoint, that's kind of the way I think about it. But again, it took like 10 years probably until I kind of honestly met with you and Christina and started talking to you two about, kind of what my purpose is. I would get pigeonholed even on like workouts with friends where I'd be like, no, I've always like my body, according to everyone else, fits this pace for easy miles. And this is what I should be with a bike at because I have bigger legs and, et cetera. Right. This is what I should squat, whatever. I just kind of fell into the whatever hole it was and just accepted that. And I never really, I always had that mental block, right? Of like, I shouldn't go push there because I just don't, that's not what I've been told. Right.
mm.
So that's like the athlete standpoint of it. And then dude, honestly, the coaching standpoint, it's, to be honest, it's been a strength for me as a coach. And
Mm.
it took a little of realization for me to, kind of get to this point. Again, I'm not your typical endurance coach. And I've realized that has attracted people because I don't look like your typical endurance coach. I've never been fast. I was not, if a runner comes to me and they're like, hey, I want to go sub 4:30 in the marathon. I was that runner.
Mm-hmm.
I was never the first marathon was a 2:40 guy. I've never even ran a sub 3 marathon, right? So, and I found that that's actually helped me kind of reach a demographic that's been, um, kind of traditionally excluded, or like maybe felt like the people were kind of against them, I guess, or if that makes sense, like there wasn't a place for that demographic. So from a coaching perspective, I honestly feel like it's kind of helped, um, which maybe not be what maybe isn't what you've experienced or what you kind of expected my answer to be there, but it took that mental switch though before I could kind of understand as a coach, like this is my role, and this is who I am, and I'm going to help those athletes that accept that. And if an athlete, I don't actually think, to be honest, I don't know if someone that like who wanted to start working with me, like a free session or like an initial consult, things like that. I don't think anyone's ever actually said anything to me in those types of settings. It's more outside of that, or making a comment as the athlete, Jacob. It's not actually like from the coaching thing, and I haven't actually thought
Mhm.
about that until you just asked that question.
Hmm.
So I don't know what that. I don't know. I think
Yeah.
there might be like a confidence thing too that I definitely bring more to coaching than I do as an athlete still. That might also, kind of detour people. And
Mm.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if it is confidence in some way. Like we definitely just in general for people like coaches who are also athletes, um, show up differently in those spaces. Like those are two identities that we hold, and we hold them separately, right? It's like this very personal identity component of who we are as an athlete and our goals personally, and then coaching as a profession is a much different thing, and it is largely exclusive from our athletic endeavors. They inform, how we coach, but it doesn't matter like how shitty I feel during a workout. I can still be an amazing coach, right? And so how I feel in those two places are very different. Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about, you know those two things get blended together too, right? Like there, it's like Jacob the athlete, Jacob the coach are the same. Like externally speaking, that kind of gets lumped together, right? I think that's an expectation, and it may not be. I'm not saying it's a negative expectation, but it's just kind of one thing that you do, right? It's like, oh, there's
Right.
Jacob's whole like endurance coach arm over there, and it's himself as an athlete, and I think we've all experienced. Like I have had the same experience. Um, what's that? Well, one of the things I want to touch on, and this is a little bit tangential, but I'm always curious of like that your performance as an athlete and what that means about who you are as a coach. So to that end, like it gets lumped together. Um, what's your thoughts on how those things are or aren't linked or combined?
Yeah. When I first got into this industry, I was so insecure about, I'll just use the marathon because it's kind of my favorite race. And I was very insecure about my marathon time at the time. I think I had ran like 3:58 or something like that. I had gone under 4, but I was, like I said, very insecure. And right place, right time. People take opportunities on you, and I'm very grateful for like specifically Performance Running Gym and the owners there that like trusted me. But they brought me in, and like everyone else was denying me a job at the time, and they brought me in, and yeah, I spent year and a half, 2 years, kind of basically trying to get my marathon time down. Not trying to be a better coach, focusing on how can I get my marathon time down. Yes, I was also thinking about being a better coach for sure, but like the front of my mind was how do I get my marathon time down, because that's going to get more people to come work with me. That's what I thought, right?
Mm.
And I don't remember exactly when. I think now I'm thinking about it. It was probably the first person I had that wanted to work with me and try to get under 3. And I met with him for like a initial consult. And not one time in that whole conversation did he ask what my marathon time was. Not one time did he ask what pace I was doing for easy miles, how much miles I was running, if I was doing any strength. Not one time didn't ask anything about the athlete side of what I was doing. He didn't care. He wanted to know if I could coach him to get under 3. That was all he cared about.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and that was like a little bit of a switch for me. That was kind of the first like little confidence booster that I had, because it took me like, I went from 358 to like 347 to 344, 355. And then I dropped 10 minutes and then I dropped another 10 minutes. Like it took a while for me to kind of figure things out and work with the right people to do that. So that wasn't like, it was a confidence booster later for sure. But when I was like first getting started as a coach, that those faster times came later as an athlete. So I was building a client base when I wasn't, fast, whatever that means, right? Whatever I thought it meant in my head. And I just kind of realized like, dude, the people that want to work with coaches, Jacob, Taylor, whoever it is, right? They want to know if you, one, relate to them, and if two, you can help them. That's all they care about. The people that are looking at your credentials, well, one, they probably already did that beforehand and they made a decision based off of, even meeting with you in the first place. Sure. If they are looking at my credentials as a runner versus my credentials as a coach, and they're making a decision based off whether or not they want to work with me because I don't have maybe like a fast enough PR, dude, honestly, that's just not the person that I want to help. There is a space for that, and like, bravo, awesome. It's not my client. When I
Mm-hmm.
think about like the coach I want to be, and like what I want to represent, kind of like more like tangible surface level things I'm kind of thinking about are like, who are my athletes? Do I have a solid athlete foundation? Do I have a lot of people that want to work with me? Are they healthy? Are they able to do what they want to do every day? We all, as a coach, you're going to have athletes that are injured, but if the majority of your athletes are injured, like that's what I'm thinking about for people looking at me and when I'm even picking my own coaches to work with, right? That's what I'm thinking about. Like, are your athletes healthy? Right. Um, and then progression, right? Are your athletes getting better? Whatever that means, right? Figuring out those details. That's the type of questions that I want my future clients to know about me. And that's the type of questions that I'm asking coaches. I'm not asking about like, dude, my coach right now that I'm working with to try to go under 3 in the marathon, he's running in the Olympic trials this weekend. And that's so impressive. And I'm very happy for him. And that's super dope. But that wasn't a decision that weighed in on whether or not I was going to coach with him. If he didn't make the Olympic time trials, like qualifiers, okay, like I'm still going to want to coach with him. Nothing else changed. Right. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I think it just kind of depends on like what, as an athlete, what does the athlete want, and then as a coach, what are you trying to prove? Like, really, do the times really matter? Think deeply about that, right? It's kind of how I
Mm-hmm.
think about it.
I completely agree. Yeah, I think I've always, and I had to go through my own kind of journey with that. I think it's um, probably at one point or another, all coaches probably get kind of pulled into that trap a bit, right? And I think I've, yeah, I think it's a pervasive enough thing, and we have lots of evidence to kind of support that mentality in the sense that there's a lot of athletes out there that pick coaches just based on how fast they are, right? Like there's a ton of professional runners that just decide to be coaches because people pick them because they're so it's hard when you're like people like me and you and you're like, no, like what does this mean about me, but yeah, I think having those things is separate. um it's a different thing, right? Like being fast and building an impactful relationship with someone are massively different things, and if you haven't done it yourself, it doesn't mean that you can't coach someone to do it, right? That's the other thing. You don't have to do every distance ever in the world, right? It's like if you're coaching running athletes, you're like, I mean, no, I haven't done everything, right? Like, but I've done enough, and I certainly understand the principles. Um, and yeah, I think there's such an opportunity there. I think we're seeing. think we're seeing a shift. I don't know. Do you agree? Like it feels like we are seeing a shift into more kind of relationship focus. There is, there's kind of two. Um, People are seeing those things as mutually exclusive. I think in a good way, right? It's like this person does this thing as an athlete, but they're a great coach, and this is what their athletes are saying. This is what I don't know. Do you experience that? Do you think there's a general, or is it still just as pervasive as ever been? And I need to get my head out of my ass.
No, I think there is. I think there is a shift. Um, again, I just think kind of about myself and like the coaches that I'm close to and whatnot, and like actually, maybe it's not a shift as it is more of like us with our background and our issues, like kind of understanding now that the general public isn't actually caring as much about times, or maybe it is a shift. I don't know, but like when I think about like the clients I work with, like they wish me good luck on every race, and whether I do good or bad, they say you did awesome.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about like friends that are coaches, even as the athlete version of them, I'm like, good or bad, I'm wishing them good job. Like, like they're trying to better themselves, period. Like I'm not, and I'm a coach, right? Again, it goes back to like those other things that are more important to me, like progression. Are you trying? Are you healthy? You know, like that type of thing. So yeah, I don't know if it's a shift or if it's, like I said a little bit ago, like if it's more of like me and other coaches, like, because we all get into the field because a lot of times we had some type of maybe negative Y issue, whatever it was, right? And we're insecure about something, right? And maybe we as coaches then grow as athletes out of our insecurity because we're learning that, these different things,
Mm.
right?
Right. We want to help other people like solve for our own problems, and like
Right.
flatten that learning curve a bit or
Yeah.
like open up yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that's, I mean, yeah, I think I think it's spot on. I mean, even when I think about like how I think about, um, and you touched on this earlier, it's like people that may not have had the opportunity to see themselves as an athlete or as athletic, and so they let that part of them go, right? And so one of my big commitments and missions is to expand like the definition of who an athlete is, and like who that definition applies to, and by way of that, like who who has access to a relationship with a coach, right? Like that has been a very, in my opinion, like too closed off, right? It's like, oh, you can only work with a coach if you are fast, right? There's quotes all over that statement. Um, like, no, like you can anyone who is interested in pursuing a better version of themselves, a happier, more fulfilled version, a healthier version, like that relationship is open to them, right? And we as coaches can support that individual. I could give two shits if you're trying to be fast or not, right? Like I'm here to show up for people, right? I'm here to help people like feel like they're able to commit to themselves and like all of the access that provides and what that means for other areas of their life. Um, so yeah, I think it is interesting to think about it through like my own personal lens, though, because that's also like a shift that I've gone through. It was like very, very clear, very narrow lane for a long time, right? For a while, it was like I race bikes and I'm trying to race bikes really fast. And then it was like I run ultra marathons. I wasn't as fast at that, but I was trying to be pretty good at that. And then now it's like all kinds of things, right? And
Right.
I'm damn near twice as heavy as I was when I was racing bikes. Um, and so I think it's also, yeah, I've never thought about that, but it's like opening up that definition for myself and kind of making peace with that and understanding what that felt like makes me want to provide that for other people, who are like, oh, I don't belong in this space anymore. Or, oh, like I used to run, but I don't run anymore. I used to run and I'm using running as an example. It could be anything, but I used to do this thing and I got injured. Now I have to do this thing. right? People struggle with that too. They struggle to shift, right? It's like I used to ride bikes and now I want to run. Like, what does that mean, right? Like you kind of have to let that piece of you go away. Yeah. What's your thoughts on how we like what the definition of an athlete is? Like, how do we expand that
Right.
and open that up, and what are like the possibilities there?
Well, athlete and coach. I'm going to take this kind of in two separate ways. What is an athlete? Anyone. That to me, that's an easy answer. Anyone's an athlete. I don't think there really is like a just period. Anyone. If you can move, you're an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion. Kind of when I think more so about the mindset, like the mindset shift on like coaching of athletes. That's like this is where my mind's going on this question. Kind of like for a long time, back to that whole fast thing, right? And I'm gonna try to debunk this a little bit. We used to think like coaches were, meant to get us faster, right? And I've been thinking about this a lot because actually, like maybe a month ago now, someone mentioned to me they were like, "No offense, but I don't really understand why anyone would hire you as a coach. Nothing against you, but like as a coach." And I was just kind of thinking about like, again, now I'm kind of taking this a little bit differently than what you originally asked, but I was thinking about like coaches and our roles and helping any athlete, right? Running is one niche, right? And this is something I specialize in, but any athlete as a coach, right? And this is growing. You think about like 6 months from now, right? I have a run coach. We're going to use that as an example. Or, I mean, we can use business coaching too. You think about 6 months from now and where you want to be, right? As a runner, right? If I'm 6 months out and someone tells me, okay, in 6 months you have a healthier relationship with running, you are running consistently, you have no injuries, and you're faster. Sure, maybe that's a part of it, right? But you're feeling the best you ever have, right? And you made a good relationship out of it. Like you have someone, a mentor figure that you can go to, right? Like think back if you were in any sports in high school, your coaches were mentors. They weren't, you didn't go to them because of the workout necessarily. You went to them a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times because of the mentorship that they provided, right? And that is what I think about when I'm thinking about like coaching and the direction that coaching as a whole in this industry is moving towards. And who we're trying to help, right? So, taking it kind of back to that whole athlete question, if you're someone that moves and you want to get better and have a better relationship with your sport, like I'm your guy, like
Mm-hmm.
that's who I'm trying to help. That's who's an athlete, right? And if you think about again, 6 months from now, you feel better, you're stronger, you train harder, you are maybe faster if that's important to you, have a better relationship with the sport of whatever it is you're doing, right? Like to me, that's worth coaching and that's worth the mentorship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Business centered, business coaching. If you are 6 months from now, a year from now, your business is doubled. You have mentors that talk shop with you about business stuff. You have tools you didn't have access to before. That's worth it to me too. It's that's just kind of my mindset and where I'm kind of thinking about like the shift that we're making as a society towards like more people. It's getting more normal to have coaches because you know stick to your craft and then, in my opinion, get a coach for the other crafts. If you want to learn about it, who's a better person to learn from than someone that's coaching it?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
uh,
That's great.
that's where my
I
mind
like that.
goes.
Yeah. I mean, that really brings us back to that it brings us back to the why. Like specifically, it's not about, like what's your why? And somebody's like, I want to get faster. It really just, it's not that that's not a good driver and that that's not a fair thing to want. It's that it diminishes the quality of all the other things that you're getting as well, right? Like, so if you were to define success at the end of 6 months of working with a coach as I want to get faster, and then en route to working to get faster, to your point, you have all these other things, right? You have someone in your corner, you have, you're feeling healthier, everything's more sustainable, you've been getting in consistent exercise, you started running with a group and you've made friends, right? Like the list could literally go on and on of all of the kind of secondary and tertiary benefits that you get en route. But if you've just set like a time and you're like, in 6 months, I want to run a 2:55 marathon, you run a 3:10, and you say, well, then that means I failed in my relationship with like you've really diminished and just overshadowed all of these other amazing things that you get. And it's the same thing you touched on the business space. It's like, revenue, right? Of course, businesses are here to make money. I want people to make money. That's a fine goal, but also like let's think about what you get in route to doing that, right? Like, are you enjoying interacting with your business more? Are you able to bring in the right clients that are actually exciting? Are you able to have, like you said, have mentorship? Are you able to get super clear on like where your customer is at and how to access them and what revenue streams make the most sense for your business? And yeah, like maybe it's 6 months, you didn't hit exactly that number, but look at what you do have, right? Or in a year or 2 years from now. So that's where, yeah, I think it's maybe even less about like the specific why and more about like the diversification of that why. Right? It's like, yeah, like have kind of this, and you just want to have, I think, like a multi-pronged approach, right? And that's why like I always come back to the process side of things. And I talk about like process oriented goals a lot, right? It's like, what are your wins along the way, right? Because like the sub 3 hour marathon, that's really cool and it's super sexy. And who the hell knows if it's going to happen? I mean, yeah, eventually, right? If you work hard enough, it will happen. But it might not, is it this marathon? Is it next year? Is it 2 years from now? Is it so like having those things along the way? I think that's just a great recognition of like identifying all of these other pieces that really still equal success that you otherwise wouldn't have had. Um, yeah, I love that. Like anyone's an athlete. That's cool. We
I should say, I did steal that from Paul Check. I did not come up with that. I was in a program design course like a little bit ago, a couple months ago, and that's where I got that from, and I was like 100%. So
Yeah,
I'd
that's
love to take
cool.
credit for that, but that was
Yeah,
not my
we
original idea.
I worked to I wanted to kind of define that with TEC, and we came up with anyone dedicated to moving their body. Um, how does that sound? I don't know. I almost like yours is like simpler, or Paul.
Right.
That like there was a bit of like consistency there. Where I was like, you do have to be interested in doing it consistently. I don't know. Maybe I'm off on that. Like, is that dedication piece? Now I'm rethinking the whole definition.
Well, yeah. I mean, just to push back on that, like, what if they're not dedicated? Does that not like automatically make them not an athlete? However, like, yeah, actually, yeah. Does that not make them an athlete? Like, if they're not
Yeah,
dedicated, that's the thing to think about. And
sure.
you know, I once got one of the first questions I asked a mentor of mine when I was getting into this industry. This was like 4 years ago now, and this turned me off so much to him at first, actually, and he is one of the biggest role models in my life now. And I asked him, I was like, I can't keep athletes dedicated. I said motivated, but dedicated, right? I can't keep my athletes, like I had like three at the time, and just kind of like test trialing things, right? I can't keep them working out. I can't keep them motivated. And he looked at me and he was like, it is not your job to motivate people. That's
Mm,
not your job. However, so at first that turned me off. And then I went through this period where I was like, okay, it's not my job. Yeah, it's not my job. Right. And then I started actually questioning that though, of like, wait a minute, what's one of like the biggest things you're doing right now, trying to be like as a leader and a light? It's to inspire people and motivate them. So in a sense, it is kind of like, well, maybe that is part of our coach's job to maybe help bring dedication to people. Again, my
mm,
mind likes to go on tangents, so I kind of
mm-hmm.
took that on a little spin. But so maybe anyone can be an athlete, dedicated or not, and maybe part of a coach's job is to help someone get dedicated. You're not going to help if someone doesn't want to change whatever they're doing. You're not going to help that, period. But
Right.
there's a part of it that you like, Like I've been told that before, that I've helped people change habits and change their lives and that they weren't doing before, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that I think there's something to that of maybe they don't have to be dedicated right off the bat.
Right.
I think they will eventually,
Yeah. No,
and
I
waves,
think,
like
yeah,
different
right.
waves of life.
Sure. Yeah. Dedication isn't like this consistent force on a daily basis. We all, I mean, and that, you know, we could speak to that too, like from the athlete perspective. Like yeah, some days it feels great. Some days you're like, man, I would give anything to not have to work out. Like I
Right,
feel this today's not the day.
right.
Um, the motivation that's interesting. I mean, I have, let's unpack that because I don't know how I feel. I agree with you, and I also just personally don't know how I feel about that. And I think I've changed. I don't know. It's oscillated over the years. I'm just going to talk this through in real time because I'm interested to understand what this sounds like for me. Um, I'm not a cheerleader, right? So I always tell athletes I work with, I'm like, I'm not your guy. Like, if you need a guy who's like, come on, buddy, like you got it. Like, you need to find somebody else. Like, I'm I'm not here for it. I will jump on a grenade for people that I work with. I'm all in, but I match that person's commitment, right?
Hmm.
Like that's just how I behave. And I'm sure you may have seen that. Like that's how I show up, and I'll do anything for you up to the extent that you're willing to do it for yourself. Um, and so like the people historically over my multiple decades as a coach, it has not worked out with people that can't get it going, right? They're like, oh, I'm struggling. I'm like, I don't know, man. Life's hard. Figure it out or don't. Like, I'm here for you. So, yeah, like, I don't know. That's interesting. But, like, yeah, I mean, there is a part of that with coaching. So, what role does motivation play for athletes and coaches? That's a good point. Like, I don't know. Is it our
Right.
job? Like, I'm perfectly willing to admit that I've dropped the ball if that's not a strength of mine. I think that there's a lot of people that need that, and that's a perfectly fine thing to need. Um, but yeah, like I don't know, take me through a little further down that like path of like motivation and what that looks and feels like for you in practice.
Yeah, it's one of those it depends answers, right?
Mm.
Yes, I've seen people in the like athletes or whatnot that like they have made no change for 2 years, right? Like, and you try to help, right? And then your effort kind of goes down and they just still no change, right? Like that person, yeah, I'm not gonna try to motivate them, right? But you also see like the person that comes in and like I think about like a new run coaching relationship. They come in and they want to run a marathon, 50 mile or whatever it is, right? And right off the bat, usually, like when I meet someone new and I can tell they're excited, I get excited and I usually go a little higher, and I start brainstorming ideas, and I'm not just matching their energy, but I'm usually a little higher than them in the beginning, right? And not
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not on the ball with other clients, but like I am on the ball with like new people, right? I'm like, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
get them rolling immediately. I'm writing their plan off the bat. I'm super excited about it, right? My like matching, right, energy, right? Like it's definitely usually higher than the clients, I would say, in the beginning. And then there's a shift. Usually, if there isn't a shift, that's where it's like, okay, this is probably something on them and it's not my job to motivate them. But usually there's a shift and their energy gets higher and yours, if anything, maybe goes down because they get a little bit more independent, right? And they get a little bit more self-motivated. So that's kind of where I'm like, yeah, I think there's a part that we play, a role we play with motivating people in the beginning, and especially, kind of getting them off the ground from like that standpoint. But then also like my new shirts and kind of a new like tagline I'm working on right now is "We get to do this." And again, this I actually stole this from a client who stole it from Sally McRae. But like dude, if I have one person walking through Target and they see my shirt and it says we get to do this, and it instills a little motivation in them because they were just pissed off because a bike workout didn't go well, and now they're like, that's the difference between them keeping going the next day and not. Like, it could be something as little as that too. And I didn't even have to do much, and I was still motivating. So it's like, what is motivation? What are the different lanes that we can motivate people through? And yeah, I think that is partly our job. So like
Mm-hmm.
partly disagree with my mentor on that, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it just
Yeah.
depends.
Right. And it's like, now that hearing you talk about it, it's like it's a diversification of, for me, like what that actually means. Like motivation isn't necessarily, or doesn't have to be like the cheerleader, right? It's like
Right.
you can motivate with your actions. You can motivate by just being excited and being in that person's lane. You can motivate with material you put out there, t-shirt, like, yeah, like, and I love that, like, you're that we get to do this. That's such an important thing to remember, right? Like, we get bogged down as as athletes, and they're like, it feels like a chore. Is that Sally McRae that started, or is you
I
mentioned
I
her?
don't know if that's where like the origins. That's as far back as I can find. She said it in
Yeah,
a podcast, supposedly. I
yeah,
googled it and stuff because I was like, I'm not gonna throw something on a shirt and potentially maybe trademark this thing. If
yeah,
someone else already has, I haven't found anything. You
yeah.
know, um,
She has do the work now. Have you seen that?
yes,
It's yeah. What was that DTW?
yeah,
She's rad. I love her.
yeah,
But yeah, like, I think it is important to remember. That's a great, like, and that is motivating. Like, back to the motivation piece. Like, we get to do this. Like, if you're having a crap day and you feel like it's a chore and you're struggling to get your workout, and you can't find the time, you can't, like, it's elective. Like, we get to do this, right? Like, if you
mhm,
have a body that can engage in any level of activity, in any sort of movement, like, what an opportunity, right? Like,
right,
that's great. We get to do it.
right,
You don't have to. Like, do I think it's a good idea? Do I think you'll enjoy life more? Do I think, yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't matter at all. Like, you don't have to do it. You get to do it. Yeah. And so that, yeah, even again, like with the motivation piece, you're like, oh yeah, yeah, that's a good just reminder.
yeah.
Um,
Especially as coaches too. Something I tell myself. I think my client, when I first heard that, he was doing a plank or something, and he
yeah.
was, in the pain cave a little bit, and he was like, "We get to do this. We get to do this." And
Oh,
I tell
nice.
myself that like on a daily basis. Like my girlfriend, she'll text me and text like literally yesterday. She texted me and she's like, babe, it's one of those days where it's just like I can't believe I get to do this. And I think as coaches, so if there's any coaches listening to this, like everyone deserves to have bad days. There are bad days in every industry. Don't get me wrong. But like on those bad days, really think about what you're doing and the fact that like, we get to get paid to do this, right? I think that that's something too that like it's not normal. Like we are very lucky, and I think that's something that we need to remember a lot of times too as coaches and
Right.
athletes too. But
Right. Yeah, and as coaches, like, through the lens of like entrepreneurship and business, like, what an amazing opportunity. Like, you literally get to take something that you are excited about and turn it into a business. Like, that doesn't exist, right? I mean, like, even the best entrepreneurs and the best, like, they had a good idea, but they're probably not passionate about it, right? Like, it that the level at which we're able to expand and build on something that we genuinely love and, like, have literally dedicated our lives to is such a unique opportunity to take this thing that means so much to us and continues to be like such a prevalent part of our lives, and build a business off of it. Like, and then en route to building that business, like, support people and make people better and change their lives. And, right, and I'm not trying to put, like, I'm not saying that everybody I interact with, like, walks away a different person, but, like, in some way, right? Like, we have these small opportunities that, like, where people are better off for having met us if we do our jobs as coaches. And I think yeah, like what an incredible thing to be a part of. Like,
Yeah.
um, the guy that, whatever, like whoever invented toilet paper, like they weren't passionate about toilet paper, right? They didn't go through the rest of their life and they're like, oh my God, like you wouldn't believe, they didn't like, it was a business idea or whatever. Man, that's a
Right.
crap example. Um,
I hear you.
yeah. So I don't know. I love that. That's great. Um, Beautiful. Any closing words, thoughts? That feels like a real high point. I think but any
Yeah.
any leftovers before we uh, let it go?
Not that I can think of. Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Every time I leave, I feel more inspired. Speaking of people motivating, I feel more inspired every time I leave a
Oh,
conversation
good.
with
See,
you.
maybe I am good at motivating. It's just I have to do it. I have to do it in other
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. I'm not the cheerleader either, man. I am not. I never have been. When I was in cross country in high school, like I used to look at other people that were like getting super loud. It's just never something I've been super into. I like my
Yeah,
excitement doesn't show that way. It's just, and I'm super outgoing and energetic.
yeah. I'm the
So
same way. Like,
I
yeah,
hear you.
I'm not the guy on the sideline yelling. I'm not the guy. I don't really go to like sports events, but like I'm not that person. I'm not like cheerleading. I'm not clapping. I'm not like, good job, Jacob. You can do it, buddy. Like,
Right.
no, like, I mean, you're here. Like, I assume that you think you can do it, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
you don't need to hear it from me. So, I'm glad there's somebody else in my camp. It makes me feel less bad about myself. Um, well, cool. Thanks for being on the show, Jacob. I appreciate you.
Thank you.